If you're here, then I know you need support. Why else would you be here, right? But too often I find that folks get stuck on just one type of support when actually there are lots of options out there to get the help you need to move your book forward. And today I want to talk about how to go through the factors in your own life and your own book to figure out what type of support you really need and how best to get that. Stay tuned. If you're ready to climb out of the free advice rabbit hole and get some real one-on-one support, you are in luck. Currently, registration is open for the Memoir Method. This 9-month group program will give you everything you need from training to support to real accountability. Learn more at pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. In this digital age, you have so many options of how to get support to move your book forward. And that's great because we all need all the help we can get. But at the same time, sometimes having all of those options makes it harder, actually, than if we had a more limited slate of choices. So how do we think about what type of the support is the most appropriate for you, for your book, and for your bottom line? Well, the way we're going to do it is we're going to work through a couple of factors. And what I want to do is I want to talk through the things that you need to be considering first, and then I'll go through a rundown of some of the best ways to get that support depending on how you answered the questions at the beginning of this video. Okay, so let's get started with the questions. The first question that I want you to ask yourself, and by the way, by far the most important of all these questions, is why do you need support? Now, I find that a lot of people don't really even know the answer to this question, and in fact, will spend a lot of time going down the YouTube rabbit hole or listening to podcasts or Googling, really when they haven't even dialed in what exactly they need. So, of course, there are a few different things that you might need in terms of support. One of them, and if you're here, I suspect this is the one for you, is that you might need some kind of training or skills or advice, right? A lot of times when we start to write our memoir, we realize that we don't know how to make an outline. We don't know how to tell a story in a compelling way. We don't know how to pace our work so that it moves forward when it should and slows down a little bit when it should. We don't know how to write dialogue, etc., etc. So do you need some kind of a skill? Is that what you're looking for? Or the second reason that you might be looking for support is that you need accountability. Now, I hear this all the time from my one-on-one coaching clients because sometimes they will say, I have questions and I love that I can get the answers from you. But one of the things that they don't anticipate is how valuable it is just to have somebody that you're checking in with every single week. You're going to do your homework if there's a due date, right? We all know that from when we were in school. So do you need accountability is what you're looking for, someone to check in on you, to know you're working on the project, and be able to kind of nudge you along either gently or with some tough love. The third reason you might need support has to do with love, right? Maybe you are somebody that needs some encouragement. If you're somebody who is really hard on yourself, if you tend to be a perfectionist or you tend to, be somebody who, when stuff starts to go wrong, you'll kind of spiral in that, kind of sit in that soup of not feeling very good. Maybe really what you need is some kind of uplift and encouragement. And I do find, actually, I do quite a few mindset shift videos on this channel. I do hear from people who are coming to YouTube or a podcast really because they just want some kind of uplifting support that's encouraging for them. So is that what you need? Or is the thing that you're looking for some feedback? Are you somebody who, as you write, you really need somebody to look at what you're doing and let you know if you're on the right track or if you're not on the right track? Now, this is easier said than done, right? Because oftentimes we have got to just get stuff on the page. But I do find that a lot of the clients that I work with, a lot of the people that I talk to at different writers' events, it really is helpful to them to get that ongoing feedback. If you get feedback on chapter 3, a lot of times it's going to make your chapter 4 and 5 and 6 better, right? Because you're learning along the way. So are you somebody that is looking for feedback? Now, the trick to this question, what are you looking for? Why do you need support? Is that oftentimes we need all of them. And I think that's part of the reason that it's so difficult to really identify what it is you need. Because, sure, one day we have a technical question that we need answered. The next day we need encouragement. And then we finish the chapter, so we want some feedback. So this may be you, right? You may need more than one. You may need all of them. But I want you to think a little bit about, why do you need support? Why are you here? Is it for a technical question? Is it for uplift? Is it for, you're kind of using for accountability? Why do you want that support? Okay, so once you have that figured out, the second question that I want you to ask yourself is, how frequently do you need that support? This is a huge range, and it might change as you are moving through your project, but it's really helpful to have a sense of how often you are seeking that support. So you might know, if you're watching on YouTube, you probably are somebody who has some sense of how often you need support, because how often are you on YouTube, right? Are you somebody who will kind of go down the rabbit hole and watch video, but you have trouble kind of getting started? You might be somebody that needs frequent support, right? You are going to need somebody either to give you those skills, or sometimes looking for those skills is a disguise for needing accountability and encouragement, right? But you will know the frequency that you're popping on YouTube, or the frequency that you're listening to podcasts. On the other side of that spectrum, you may be somebody who really, you just need help with this one thing, right? You just need help figuring out how to do your outline. Once you've got that, you will be in good shape. You just need this one question answered. Now, this is deceptive, right? Because often I find, yes, you've got that one thing, but then as we write, we're going through, different sets of challenges. So you may have things that pop up that aren't quite as sporadic as you thought, but try to give kind of an honest assessment. Are you somebody who needs really regular, really frequent support? Or are you somebody that really, you just need somebody that you can reach out to and ask a question of and move on? That's going to be the biggest difference in terms of whether you are going to be looking for somebody who you're going to pay, or whether you're going to be able to find what you need just simply by dialing in on what you are looking for. Okay, and then the third question, speaking of somebody that you're going to need to pay, what is your budget? Now, as you no doubt know, there is a huge range of budgets that you can spend to get the support that you want and need. But I want you to think in terms of categories here. Are you someone who is not willing to spend anything, or not able to spend anything on getting support? That is fine. In this year, we have so many free resources on the interwebs. So if you are somebody who is not able or willing to spend anything, I think you can probably find a lot of what you need kind of by cobbling together some of the things I'm going to talk about later in the video. But it's good to know if you are not able to spend anything, or you're not willing to spend anything. The middle kind of group here is that you do have a little bit of a budget. I would really encourage you, by the way, to define what that number is for yourself. But if you have a little bit of a budget, but you really need to make sure that you're spending it really wisely, that's a really good thing to know. Now, one thing I do find that people do that is not always the best choice is that if you have a smallish budget, a lot of times it's tempting to think, well, I'm going to just save this money for an editor. So once my draft is done, then I'll hire an editor. Now, I get that, but one thing that I do want you to watch out for is that you might need support now. Now, I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I think it's worth repeating. If you are not making the progress that you want to make, it is possible that now is actually the time you need to invest, because it sounds great to wait till you have that manuscript and then hire an editor. But if the manuscript is never finished, there will never be a point when you hire an editor. right? I hate saying that. I always want to be uplifting and encouraging, but I have seen this too often, and I want to make sure that you don't fall into that trap. So define what that budget is. If it's a limited budget, make sure that you are thinking about when is the time to invest that and not just defaulting to spending it all at the end. And then the third category is a category of people who you are willing to spend some money, you are willing to invest, but that support is going to have to be valuable, of course. It's going to have to be what you need for you to feel comfortable making that investment. Now, you have already answered those first two questions, so it will be much, much easier with that in mind to really figure out what types of investments are going to be worth it to you and valuable to you versus what types are going to sound really good but not actually meet that core need. So once again, we are coming back to this why. What support is it that you need? Because that is going to help you determine whether a particular type of support is going to be worth it to you. Okay, so once you have those three questions answered, why do you need support? How often do you need support? And what are you willing to spend? Now you are in a much, much better position to make smart choices about how to get the support that you need. And what I want to do for the rest of this video is talk you through the different forms of support that are available to really anybody in this digital world if you fit the why, the how often, and the budget of each of these items. So there's something here for everybody. You may decide that you want to kind of piece different things together. That is great. Some of them are a little bit more comprehensive. Some of them are just going to hit kind of one of those reasons. So let's start with the most budget friendly. And the most budget friendly always is just going to be someone that you know. Now, an interested friend, just someone that you have met in your regular life, is going to be really helpful. Even better if you have friends who are in this world or kind of in a related world, people who are used to either talking to people about their feelings. This might be a coach or a therapist or a pastor. It might be somebody who is writing, who works in some kind of a writing field. Either they're, writing blog posts and marketing materials. They write as a hobby or as a professional writer, but they are in that writing world. Or it just really might be somebody who just knows you and cares about you a lot, right? But the thing to remember is that when you are thinking about who this interested friend is what is the reason you want support? Because with the exception of that second category, that professional writer, and even some cases in that category, you might not be able to get that knowledge support, right? So that's really important because as you approach this friend, as you kind of say like, hey, I need somebody for accountability, or I need someone for encouragement, or I need someone to read my drafts and give me feedback, remember that what their strengths are is going to determine how valuable their support is. That's important, because there is nothing that will hurt you more than when you set out to get support and then you realize that the support you got is not the support you need. So really think about that interested friend. Can you bring an interested friend in? Any friend will be able to give you accountability and encouragement. So if that is what you need, find somebody that is willing to just text you after the end of your planned writing time, email you every once in a while, even like take you out for happy hour or brunch just to celebrate a little bit of the wins in your writing. An interested friend is an excellent choice for any of those needs. It is budget friendly, and depending on the friend, you can usually get some really regular support from them. Okay, the second free option that I wanted to share, you already know, and that is free resources on the internet. Now, there are many, many YouTube videos that writers put out. There are excellent podcasts. And by the way, if you are watching on YouTube, we are on all major podcast platforms. So if you'd rather listen there, bop on over. There are a lot of other podcasts out there too that can help you learn some of these tricks of the trade. Now, when we are looking at these kind of free resources, keep in mind that what you are probably getting from those resources is training. You are not likely to get things like accountability or encouragement or feedback for free through internet resources, right? But there is great training material online that you can get for absolutely free. We have a few downloads. You can go to pageandpodium.com/checklist to download our memoir method checklist that has every single step from coming up with your idea for your memoir all the way through to making a publishing and marketing plan. You can download that at pageandpodium.com/checklist. And we also have a planning calculator to help you figure out the time that you're going to need to invest in this book. You can download that at pageandpodium.com/calculator. So either of those are free resources that we offer. There are lots of other companies and presses like ours that do offer these kinds of free resources. So don't be afraid to seek those out if what you are looking for is some training. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a cautionary tale here. One thing that I see happen a lot is that folks will use this kind of seeking out training really as a procrastination technique. And often what happens is that if you are the type of person who is kind of a perfectionist, you're a little bit hard on yourself, you really, really want this book to be good, a lot of times it will end up that you kind of go online looking for answers, but really what you want is to reassure yourself that you know how to do this, that you're a good enough writer, that you have the training, etc. Online resources will not do that for you. None of us in this world have every single skill that any writer would need, truly. Even if you have a full MFA, there are still going to be things that you have questions about, that you need feedback on, that you're uncertain about how to move forward with. You will not use these free resources to convince yourself that you are worthy of writing a book. It's not possible. You are worthy of writing a book. But if what you are doing is looking for resources when what you really need is encouragement, be kind of aware of that, because that is a tricky thing. And what can end up happening is that you're trying to convince yourself that you know enough, and in the process, you will totally stall out your progress. But free resources can be great, especially if you have a particular question in mind that you need answered. Define what that question is, what is that skill or that tip or that trick, and go online, find it. That is going to be so great. It will serve you so well. Okay, the third form of support, this is a very, very low level investment, is that you can purchase books on writing memoirs or short courses. Now, depending on what you're looking for, again, this can end up being kind of a tricky little rabbit hole, right? I have talked to many, many people who are reading through their 30th book on how to write a memoir, and they feel even less confident now than they did after they read their first. So be sure that you are not using things like books and short courses just as a way to stall yourself. But if what you are feeling like is, you know what, I'm pretty confident, I think I can figure this out, but it would be really, really useful to kind of just have a little bit of an overview. That is where a course or a book is really going to serve you. If you're just saying like, you know what, if I could just get a little bit of information on each stage, I think I would be in really good shape. Now, the memoir method checklist I mentioned earlier, pageandpodium.com/checklist, that is going to give you a little taste of that kind of broad overview, but it isn't going to be like a book, right? It's not a short course where it's going to take you through each of those steps and give you details, tips, tricks, hints. So it can be a really great place to start to read one of those books, invest in a short course. This can be a really budget-friendly way to get that training that you need. And sometimes investing even just that little bit can be a little bit of a nudge forward, right? Well, you know what? I've invested in this. I'm gonna do it. So if that is kind of how your brain tends to work, you also can kind of think of these as just a little tiny touch of accountability. It's probably not going to replace having somebody kind of check in with you, but it can be a little bit helpful. Okay, the fourth of these, and we're just moving right up on the budget scale, is a group program. I'm going to talk about one-on-one coaching in a little bit, but one thing that has been really popular in the last, I'll say 10, 15 years, is a group program. So you may be in a group program there for anything from, health and fitness to mindset. There are all kinds of these out there. I want to tell you a little bit about our group program. All group programs are different, but I think this might give you some sense of kind of how these tend to work and how you can think about the structure that is best going to meet the needs that you defined in that first question. So, in our group programs called the Memoir method, we have this based on kind of a few pillars. First is I really believed when I was putting this together that people do need some training. Now, I do not want you down a rabbit hole, but I do find that having a little bit more detailed training in the beginning, when you're making your plan, your outline, your structure, can be really, really helpful. So the memoir method starts with a really in-depth unit on developing your idea. And this takes you all the way from you go all the way through outlining and planning, all the way from just having kind of a little seed of an idea. So this is the development stage. We go real in depth in that. And then we have units on drafting, revising, publishing, and marketing. So you're kind of getting some training stuff in there. But since it's a group program, not a short course, you also are getting somebody to kind of guide you through so that if you get stuck, Emily or I will say, when people get stuck, we'll say, oh, well, did you, go into the vault? There's a video on XYZ, so that you have some kind of guidance. The second thing our group program is going to give, as I just mentioned, is direct sort of access to experts. So both Emily and I are available to our Memoir Method members. Every single week we have a group call so that you can hop on and ask your question directly to us. So that can be really helpful. Again, if you're somebody that you just kind of need like a reassurance, or you need just like one specific question answered, you have access to that. And most group programs are going to give you this, some kind of access to an expert. We also have the accountability built in where you're getting a weekly email. This is very common in group programs, by the way, a weekly check-in to just say, how is it going? Where can we support you a little bit better? So we have that, and then Emily writes back to everybody's accountability check so that you can kind of get a little bit of personalized encouragement. And then we have quarterly events where people get to kind of mingle and talk and whatever. So you are getting kind of a range of things in a group program. As a result, they are a little bit more expensive than we might expect a short course to be, right? Because usually you are getting some form of short course plus some additional stuff on top of that. Now, even though they are a little bit more expensive, often I find that this is still a really good investment for people, because one thing that can happen is if you don't have expert guidance, it is really, really easy to kind of nickel and dime yourself, right? To buy short courses and pay for editors and do kind of one-off things. And in the end, a lot of times people just wind up having spent the same amount that they would have getting something like a group program or a one-on-one coach. But group programs are a really, really excellent way to make that coaching a little bit more affordable because you are in a pool with other people as opposed to just being on your own. Which brings me to the next way that you can get support, and that is through one-on-one book coaching. Now, sometimes people will ask me, what is the difference between, say, a book coach and an editor? This depends hugely on the program that you are doing. There are book coaches who will just check in with you kind of every once in a while. You can do Voxer book coaching through some companies and presses. Sometimes there will be, just email coaching, all the way through to the most kind of standard traditional way to do book coaching is like an hour a week check-in where you get on Zoom, in person depending, and you just talk through whatever the issues are then. Our program is called Editor in Your Pocket, and our program also does include feedback. So we look at 10 pages or so and give you feedback on it each week in anticipation of that week's call. And we are certainly not the only press to do that. There are definitely other places where you can get a book coach who also will help you do some developmental editing as you go. And I mentioned that earlier. Sometimes I find that people really benefit from having just a little bit of feedback as they're going through. So maybe they're really kind of shaky on chapter 3, but they get some feedback. It really is encouraging. And then they can feel really good that they're not making those same mistakes just, over and over and over again as they're moving through the length of their book. Now, depending on who you are working with, it may also be useful to bring in that interested friend to give you some encouragement, say. I always try to encourage my clients, but it can be useful to get that outside bit of encouragement that you know you've got somebody that's a friend that's really checking in on you. But usually with the one-on-one support, that is going to cover pretty much all of these different things that you might need, reasons that you're seeking out support. Okay, so when we're thinking about kind of how much we want to invest, really we have moved from, interested friend, free online resources, that's all free. Short courses, usually that's going to range anywhere from, a book might be like $20 all the way through. I have seen courses that are thousands of dollars, but a lot of times they're like $99, right? You might move into a group program. Our group program is around $3,000 for a 9-month program. Or you might be even looking at something that is a shorter group program, a longer group program. And then when you're thinking about a one-on-one book coach, that is going to certainly be the most expensive. So our 9-month program is $7,500 to work with that editor and get that weekly feedback. There's a range there. You can also find one-on-one coaches that are less expensive. You can find one-on-one coaches that are more expensive. So just kind of go into some of these options with all of those questions in mind. What do you need? Where do you need the support? Why do you need the support? How often do you need that support? And what are you willing to spend to get that support? Now, I know it can be difficult to kind of wade through and sift through. If there's anything that I can do to help, please reach out. I love to hear from y'all. But the main thing I want you to take away from this video is that every single writer needs support. It is no failing or shortcoming on your part that you need support. We all do. So I hope by watching this video, you've got a little bit better sense of how to strategically find that support so that you can move that book forward. Happy writing. Have you hit the brick wall of the information you're going to get from YouTube, podcasts, and Google? If so, now might be the time to get some real structured support. And now is a great time because we currently have registration open for our next cohort of the Memoir Method. In this 9-month group program, you will get access to a training vault with everything from step-by-step instructions on how to outline and plan, all the way through to tips on publishing and marketing your book. Plus, you'll get weekly group calls where you can ask your questions directly to Emily and I. You can get an expert opinion right when you need it. Plus, you'll get weekly check-ins to make sure you stay accountable and that community support I know you want. If you're ready, head over to pageandpodium.com/memoir-method to learn more and apply today.